Buck Owens was one of the most influential country musicians of the 20th century. As the lead singer of the band Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, Buck pioneered what came to be known as the Bakersfield sound, named after his adopted hometown of Bakersfield, California. Throughout his 60-plus years in the music industry, Owens and his band charted 21 number-one hit songs on the Billboard country music chart. While Owens left his mark on the music industry, his life story was marred with hardships, relationship issues, controversy, and tragedy. So keep watching to learn why Buck Owens' career was never the same after this. Buck wouldn't have made it without Don Rich. Don learned how to play guitar and fiddle at an early age. By the time he was 16, Rich was already playing in bars in his hometown of Olympia, Washington. Rich's band, a three-piece rock and roll outfit, eventually scored a regular gig in South Tacoma, Washington, at a place called Steve's Restaurant. While playing there, Buck Owens, who also lived in Washington around this time, showed up one evening and saw Rich playing his fiddle. Buck was so impressed by this young, talented musician that he invited him to play with him at local venues. The two musicians struck up a friendship and formed a formidable musical bond. Buck played guitar while Don put his magical fingers to use on his fiddle. Soon enough, the two became regulars on a local music show on KTNT TV called Bar K Jamboree. Buck's career was already on the rise. With Don by his side, it seemed to pick up steam even quicker. After Owens' track Under Your Spell Again hit number 24 on the country charts in 1959, Capitol record execs instructed Buck to return to Bakersfield. Owens agreed to come back and asked Rich to come back with him. Don had other plans. Around this time, he had enrolled at Centralia Community College, where he began studying to eventually become a music teacher. In the meantime, he helped tutor others in music while playing local shows. But Don decided in 1960 that he would move to Bakersfield to resume playing with his old friend Buck. The first track he played on was Excuse Me, I Think I've Got a Heartache, which peaked at number 2. For the next several months, Don and Buck played in grimy venues and dingy dive bars up and down the West Coast. The majority of the time, they'd play with a house band, but sometimes it was just the two of them. While playing these sets together, the two continued to record singles back in Bakersfield. At this point, Don was officially employed by Buck, earning $75 a week. The duo's track, Foolin' Around, spent 8 weeks at the number 2 position on the charts in 1961. Over the next year or so, they began to refine their signature sound. In 1962, when Buck released the song You're For Me, it featured an upbeat 2/4 rhythm that Owens continued to make use of extensively going forward. It became his trademark of sorts. Don once described it as sounding like a runaway locomotive, while Owens likened it to sounding like a freight train. The unique style ultimately came to be known as the Bakersfield sound. In 1963, Buck formed a full band to back him on tour and in the studio. Naturally, he asked Don to be the leader of this band. In their early days, they were basically a revolving door of members who would come and go as they pleased. One of these early members was none other than Merle Haggard. While Haggard only stuck with the band for a short time, during his tenure, he christened the band the Buckaroos. After he left, the name stuck. Haggard married Buck's wife. After Haggard left the Buckaroos, he and Owens spent the next 37 years trying to steer clear of each other. It was rumored they had a pretty big feud between them. This seemed to be confirmed when Haggard married Bonnie Owens, Buck's ex-wife. There's also quite a bit of evidence to suggest the two had grounds for professional jealousy. Haggard was always envious of Owens' talent for handling business, while Owens was jealous of Haggard's more substantial reputation as a musician. After effectively avoiding each other for decades, the two eventually reunited to play one last show in Bakersfield in 1995. By that time, Merle and Bonnie Owens were no longer together, but she was still performing with him as a singer. The Buckaroos were a hit machine. On February 12, 1963, Buck and his Buckaroos recorded Johnny Russell's Act Naturally. That summer, the song became their first #1 hit. It also marked the first time Don Rich played lead guitar. In the years leading up to the success of that song, Buck had taught Don his signature guitar playing style, and by 1963, Rich was finally ready to set his fiddle down for a bit and pick up Buck's trusty old Telecaster. Owens was more than willing to let Don pluck his strings. He knew that by relinquishing lead guitar duties to Rich, he could concentrate more on songwriting and honing his abilities as a frontman. From that point off, things took off for the Buckaroos. Every track they put out seemed to rocket straight to the top of the charts. Songs like My Heart Skips a Beat, Together Again, Before You Go, I've Got a Tiger by the Tail are just a few of the band's songs that managed to snag the #1 spot on the country charts. Even the track Buckaroo, which was just an instrumental, went to #1. Don's guitar work evolved as he honed his own distinct sound while incorporating everything Buck had taught him. The twang of his Telecaster became the heart and soul of the Bakersfield sound. In 1966, the Buckaroos recorded a live album at Carnegie Hall. To this day, many believe that record is among the greatest live country albums of all time. They played such a tight set that there wasn't even a need for the band to go into the studio for post-production to fix any mistakes. In a matter of just a few short years, Buck, Don, and the Buckaroos had become the hottest country music outfit on the planet. They made waves in 1969 when they recorded the tracks Tall Dark Stranger and Who's Gonna Mow Your Grass. The latter was recorded with Don using a heavy fuzz tone that at that point was only used by garage rock bands. Country music fans were irate that Buck would permit their beloved genre of music to be defaced by such blatant use of a rock and roll sound. But he could have cared less. Despite the backlash, Who's Gonna Mow Your Grass shot to #1, where it sat for 2 weeks. Among Buck Owens fans, the song has gone on to obtain cult status. Today, it's generally regarded as being an innovative development in the Bakersfield sound. The next song that rose to the top of the country charts was ironically a cover of Chuck Berry's classic Johnny B. Good. The last #1 hit that Owens and Rich recorded together was Made in Japan, which topped the charts in 1972. Tragedy struck. On July 17, 1974, Don left Buck's studio in Bakersfield on his motorcycle en route to meet his family for a vacation in Morro Bay, California. Earlier that day, Owens had pleaded for Don to take his car instead of his bike, but Don shrugged off the suggestion. Later that evening, Don hit the center divider going northbound on Highway 1. He was violently thrown from his motorbike and suffered severe injuries to his head and body. He was rushed via ambulance to the closest hospital, but was pronounced dead upon arrival. Buck was devastated. Not only did he lose his biggest creative partner, but one of his best friends. Owens later told reporters he viewed Don as his brother, son, and best friend all rolled up into one. He further revealed that when Rich died, it felt like his musical life had ended as well. While Owens continued to press on as best he could, the magic that he and Rich had experienced together was gone. Don Rich was just 32 when he passed away. He's largely considered to be one of the most innovative country guitar players who's ever lived, and his influence is still felt throughout the musical realm, spanning numerous genres. Buck's health issues and death. In the early 90s, Buck recovered from oral cancer, but he suffered from numerous health issues in the late 90s and early 2000s. In 2004, he had a minor stroke. Those health issues forced him to cut back on performances. He passed away in his sleep at age 76 after suffering an apparent heart attack at his ranch home north of Bakersfield in 2006. He died just hours after performing at his club, the Crystal Palace. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know Merle Haggard married Buck Owens' ex-wife? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.